Welcome back.
Welcome back to Hear Us Out. I'm Renee.
I'm Curry.
Once again, as always, thank you so much to our longtime subscribers who've been with us. And for any new listeners, make sure that you hit subscribe so that you can continue to get notifications to hear us out.
Yes, and thank you. In this episode, we will be continuing
Yeah.
our reading and analysis of Plato's The Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last few
Episodes.
books,
Mm-hmm.
we have has really built up to, I can't say this moment, but the
Right.
moment in the last chapter
Mm-hmm.
where there was this finally there was an actual workable definition for justice.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's why this whole thing got started to begin with,
Right.
was to try to find the meaning and profit in justice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that the conclusion that they came to in the last chapter was that justice was everyone and everything doing what it is supposed to do in its place.
Mm-hmm.
That when something moves out of its place, moves out of its class,
Mm-hmm.
and tries to do the work and take on the responsibilities of another's place and another's class, that's where injustice
This
comes
comes in.
from.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So justice is everything being in its place
Mm-hmm.
and working in its place.
Right.
And the last chapter literally ended with them saying that now they're going to move on to injustice.
Right.
They're going to move on to trying to define and understand what injustice is.
Right.
So that's what we thought
Right.
we were going to be going into
Right.
in book 5, because we haven't we're reading this along,
Right.
going one step
Yeah.
at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought that, all right, this is where they're going to start talking about injustice, because the entire time we've been analyzing Plato's city here,
Right.
his ideas of what a city is supposed to be and how people are supposed to relate to one another. And we've been thinking there seems to be a lot of injustice in that.
Right.
So let's see what injustice is as
Right.
it relates to him
Right.
and his opinions.
Mhm.
But that is not what we get in
Right.
book 5.
No, as a matter of fact, they were like, before you even get into the conversation of injustice,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk more about these roles, or particular, people staying in their place, staying in their class, so that justice can be in the particular
Mm-hmm.
city. And so, who is it that we're going to discuss here in their particular role? Well, women and children, of course.
Because he talked about men,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right.
When he was talking about guardians,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't think he never really clearly made the distinction
Right.
that guardians were just men,
Right.
but evidently that's the way that they took it, and they being Glaucon and Thrasymachus, who
Mm-hmm.
shows back up. He's
Oh, yeah.
in this chapter, but he's not as adversarial
Right. Right.
in this.
He doesn't really need to
Doesn't
be.
need to be at this point. But so like you said, they were
Mhm.
gonna Socrates was about to go off about injustice,
Mhm.
but he stopped. He
Right.
literally stopped,
Mhm.
like Glaucon and Thrasymachus, who say, you're leaving a part of the discussion
Now,
unsaid.
Mhm.
You talked about rearing the men, making
Mhm.
sure they're prepared for their roles.
Mhm.
Talk about how you want to rear your women and children.
Right.
And yeah, that's what ended up happening. And there's only one way I can really describe. That's the only one way I can really describe this particular chapter, and that's as the madness continues.
Actually, you're being very polite as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. I'm like, this is insanity.
Mm-hmm.
This is bullshit in a nutshell, and it's 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 insane. I don't know any other way to put it.
It's madness.
It's madness.
We've said it every time we've started reading another book in
Right.
the Republic. We would always go, it gets worse.
Right.
This is.
Well, I'm not even going to say that. Well,
I can't.
of the 5 books, this one is it's totally insane.
It's the worst.
It's
so
the
far.
worst so far of the 5.
This is the halfway point. There are 10
Yes.
books in total in the Republic. So there are
And like I
5
said,
more
you know,
chapters after this. So it can
right.
get worse.
And I remember, look, I had to read the Republic. This was back in the early 90s, 1990s. And like I know that on my cover and in certain things I have all these different writings and different questions, you know, but now, you know, reading it, I don't know, years later. I'm like, whatever. Let's just
So let's
just start.
let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into
Let's get into it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we can accurately get across the feeling
Mm-hmm.
of reading this particular book. Okay?
Because I'm like, look, I think that folks will have an idea, a small idea of the issues and the discussions posed by Socrates / Plato, you know, in the role of women. Particularly if you know how, particularly if you know how women have been treated historically.
Mm-hmm.
So this, this is not going. It's not going to. It's just to read it and to hear him say it so well, for it to be written so matter of factly.
He
as
is
if
existing in an echo chamber here. Like,
yes, that is true, and I understand that, that this is actually, as far as I'm
one
concerned,
person's
this is
opinions.
Plato talking to himself, because Socrates is not,
Socrates is dead.
Yeah. So this is Plato talking to himself. So I do keep in mind that, for as much as he says, Socrates, this is, as far as I'm concerned, Plato, and I understand that this is a translation as well. So, you take all of that in mind, but still, this is, let's just
So it starts out with it literally starts out with Socrates trying to go about his discussion and then being interrupted and saying to go back and talk about women and children and how they're going to be reared up in the city. And the first thing he does is he talks about about the character and the nature of a person, right? Because his general argument is that if a woman has the character, the nature, quote unquote, of a guardian, then they should be allowed to be a guardian, right?
Yeah.
Because back in the day, during Greek times, when the men would wrestle each other, they would wrestle naked, right? And if a woman, I guess, would want to wrestle with the men, they would also wrestle naked as themselves,
right?
And he talks about how outsiders or people who really didn't understand what was going on would laugh at that situation. And he talks about how laughing at that situation is no wisdom at all. It's not smart to laugh at this, and it's not smart to try to exclude women from that particular space. And then he goes on to talk about how the argument that's being made against him when he says, you said earlier that that it is justice, it is right for someone, for the same nature to have the same position, right? But you can acknowledge that there is a world of difference between men and women, but yet you're saying that they ought to do the same roles, that they ought to have the same responsibilities when they are different. How can that be? How can you justify that? When you can acknowledge that they are different, they are equipped for different things, yet you want them to still occupy the same roles, right? And this is what he talks about, the word controversy, right? He starts talking about how, when he says nature, he's not talking about them physically, right? He's talking about the character that they exhibit, the character that they have by that particular nature. And he goes on to talk about how a lot of people at this time aren't really trying to get to the core of a matter, aren't really trying to understand one another. they're just trying to dispute against each other. He talks about, heuristic arguments.
Mm-hmm.
And heuristic basically means that you're making an argument to dispute the point instead of trying to get to the truth.
Right.
Excuse me. Trying to get to the truth of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
You're merely disputing the point.
Right. You're just critiquing and disputing, but you're not offering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not offering an answer. You're just critiquing. Critiquing an answer that's already been supplied, basically.
Mm-hmm. This is
So that's what. Yeah.
literally what he says here. It says,
Mm-hmm.
"Come along then. See if we can find the way out anywhere. We agreed, that a different nature ought to practice a different work, and that man and woman have different natures. Now we say that these different natures must do the same work. Is that the accusation against us?" "Exactly." "How noble is the power, my dear Glaucon," said I, "of the art of word controversy." "How so?" "Because so many seem unable to help falling into it. They think they are arguing when they are only striving quarrelsomely. The reason is that they don't know how to split up a given utterance into its different divisions,
Mm-hmm.
but pursue simply a verbal opposition to what is uttered. They bandy words with each other instead of using reasoned discussion."
Mm-hmm.
Right? That certainly does happen in many cases, but surely it does not apply to us in this case. It does, by all manner of means. At any rate, we appear to have got into a word controversy without meaning to. How? How? Glaucon asks. That different natures ought not to engage in the same practices.
Mm-hmm.
We have been chasing the words about with plenty of courage and heuristic wrangling, and never thought of inquiring in any way what was the sense of different nature, and what was the sense of same nature, and what we were aiming at in our definition when we allotted to a different nature different practices, and the same nature the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what he's pretty much saying is like when we talk about the difference between like what is right and what is best,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the distinction that we made very early on of the difference between right and
correct.
correct. Right. And when we talk about like the different distinctions
Uh-huh.
and trying to have this conversation,
Mhm.
this is what he's talking about.
Right.
Is that when he's talking about nature, and when people start questioning his definitions about nature, is that they're failing to examine the nuance of his statement and what he's actually trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
They're only listening to the words and trying to argue the words
Right.
instead of, like you said, splitting the utterance up into what he's actually mean,
Mm-hmm.
what he actually means when he says these things. So when he's talking, like I said, when he's talking about different natures and same natures, he's talking about the character of
Right.
a person, not merely them physically.
Right.
Yes, men and women are physically different, but they can exhibit the same character traits. And so, if a woman exhibits the character of a warrior,
Of the guardian,
then
right?
of the guardian, right? Because guardian is a broad term. Guardian talks about warriors and leaders
Right.
and administrators.
Right.
All of them are guardians, right? So if a woman exhibits the character of a guardian, then allow them in that space to be a guardian. Allow them to have that space, so you can tell that what he's arguing against, the type of misogyny that goes, when he talks about, allowing women in particular places, because he talks about how people find that laughable. They will laugh at the image of a woman in the gymnasium practicing with the men, and that's no wisdom at all.
Right.
He goes out of his way to point out how it is not wise, to laugh at that image when a woman finds herself in that place because they are exhibiting the same nature, right? So yeah, so out of context here, and out of it seems very liberal, especially for the time, and we Greece is a infamously misogynistic society.
Yes.
We've talked about many times before that they're like in their artistic depictions of marriage is no different from their artistic depictions of rape. Like that, it was no different in their society, and so you can tell that there is this ingrained misogyny that he seems to be arguing against, that he's trying to argue against, and on the surface, it's all well and good, right? But when you look at it in context, and when you look at the society that he's trying to build, you start to see the fallacy.
Yeah, and the fallacy here is, well, again, the words that he liked to use is use and useful, right?
Mm.
So we can use the woman,
Mm-hmm.
right, as the guardian if she displays those characteristics, right? Because all of that will be useful
Mm-hmm.
in the maintenance of the city.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily
So
about.
you're not actually
That's
acknowledging
right.
the person as a person.
Person,
You're
right.
only taking it as a net positive
To,
or
for the
yeah,
city.
for the city as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And that's the
So
and
there's no real
yeah.
consideration being
No,
given to the humanity.
of course no.
Only only what they can give.
Right.
Only the role that they can occupy
Right.
in the city.
Right.
That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. The use and usefulness.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So it's not about, you know, freedom for women and all. No, that's not what this is. It's what, because if she, like I say, displays these particular characteristics, that is use. That can be of use. That's useful, and
Mm-hmm.
to say that, oh well, she can't because she's a woman. Well, that's not you're not using her properly.
Mm-hmm.
You're not using her properly, and that causes injustice, madness in the city
As a whole.
as a
Yeah.
whole. So
So
that's the thing that I wanted to.
So he says literally here.
Mm-hmm.
So the women of the guardian must strip, since naked they will be clothed in virtue for gowns. They must share in war and in all the guarding of the city, and that shall be their only work. But in these same things lighter parts will be given to women than men because of the weakness of their sex, and the man who laughs at naked women exercising for the greatest good plucks an unripe fruit of wisdom from the laughter. He apparently does not know what he laughs at or what he is doing. For it is and will be the best thing ever said that the useful is beautiful and the harmful is ugly.
I literally have that written down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing that he keeps stressing over and over again.
Is his overall usefulness.
That's right.
He said, and when he talks about weakness here, he's
Mhm.
being physically,
Right.
right? That even though women may be physically weaker
Mhm.
than men, if they exhibit the character traits of
Mhm.
a ruler, the
Right.
nature of a ruler or a guardian,
Mhm.
more broadly, then allow them to occupy that space and
Mhm.
do not laugh,
Mhm.
do not make jest of that
Mhm.
because they belong there.
Mhm.
And if you cannot acknowledge that, then you are plucking an unripe fruit of wisdom.
Right.
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 So yeah, but there's also this other statement here. There's also this other thing here
Yeah.
that goes to, like we've said many times before, to that cognitive dissonance.
Mhm.
Like you can see it everywhere else, but within you
can't.
cannot.
Right.
Right. He says, right? In the city we were founding then, which do you think we formed into better men? The guardians educated as we described, or the cobblers educated in cobbling? A ridiculous question, said he. I understand, but tell me, are not the guardians the best of all citizens? Much the best. So, remember, in the last chapter, Socrates talks about, if his city were to ever go to war,
Mm-hmm.
and how that he has this mentality of divide and conquer,
Mm-hmm.
because all the other cities aren't actually one city.
Right. They're not unified.
They're not
Uh-huh.
unified.
Uh-huh.
They're cities within cities,
Mhm.
cities of poor and rich,
Mhm.
and people in power and without power who aren't all really unified in their cause.
Mhm.
So you can play on that.
Right.
You can use that to your advantage,
Mhm.
and give to the poor what the poor want, and give to the rich what the rich want, and
Mhm.
divide and conquer that way, and
Right.
play them against each other, and all that good stuff.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
We said even then, and that, like, it's funny that you can acknowledge the divisions in another city, but
Mhm.
you can't see the divisions within
Within
your own.
Mhm.
Right, within your own, philosophy and understanding of what a city is supposed to be, or
Mhm.
that these divisions were intended at it, and that people created their cities
Mhm.
with these divisions in
Just
mind.
right. Mhm.
That's what those cities were created for the exact same reason your city was created,
Right.
and that's what they ended up becoming.
Mhm.
Right, and you see that illustrated here where he is making a value judgment
Mm-hmm.
about the type of people in his city, literally prioritizing
Right. The Guardians.
the
Or,
guardians over your cobblers,
mm-hmm.
over your laymen,
Right.
right? And you have a culture in your city that has stigmatized particular music
Right.
and lines of your own mythological history,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you can only say particular things,
Right.
you can only sing and create in particular ways,
Mm-hmm.
all in service of one particular class of your guardians, to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that your rulers are equipped with the best that they possibly can be equipped with to be the most effective rulers,
Right.
and that your administrators get the best and that your warriors get the best.
Mm-hmm.
Your entire culture is geared toward one particular class and safeguarding the responsibilities of one particular class, because to you, if they have everything, then they can safeguard everything else.
Yeah. Trickle down.
Right?
You trickle
Yeah.
down. Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, but you're creating a cultural inequality.
Right.
What happens when a child, right, and that you designated,
Mm-hmm.
wants to be in your golden class,
Right.
and feels in and of that they have gold,
Mm-hmm.
right? That they have what it takes to be a guardian,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't see it, and they're relegated to being just a farmer,
Right.
right? You're thinking that your entire thing is that, well, we're all going to be unified.
Right.
So we're all unified. They're going to understand
Right.
why they shouldn't be up there.
Right. As if people would not have other aspirations and goals.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when you set up that particular division, then what do you think what do you think would happen?
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a striving. Yes, you're going to have the farmer who wants to wear the purple robe and the gold chains.
Mm-hmm. You're going
Okay,
to like
you're going to have that, right?
Your entire culture. The farmers.
Yes.
The farmers exist in a warrior culture
Mm-hmm.
that prioritizes being a warrior.
That's right.
That values your guardians, the role and
Mm-hmm.
work of a guardian, over the role and work of anyone else.
Right. So,
do you not see how that's going to create a social inequity? Because you're going to have people who want to occupy the role that
Right.
is most prized,
right.
but who won't be able to, because there's a group of old men who tells them that they don't have the gold, that they weren't designated by God
Mm-hmm.
to be in that place.
Sounds familiar? I mean, that sounds familiar. I
So
mean, that's
you
what's happening
yourself
now. Right.
are creating that
Right.
city within a city.
Mm-hmm.
You're creating that division. You literally talk about how your guardians are the best.
Right.
And they are the best people.
Right.
You're prioritizing their existence. Your entire culture is
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing their existence. And then you put up a wall and say only so many can occupy that role.
Right. I mean,
that's like, come on.
That's us in a nutshell.
That's our society. That's divisions. That's
right.
your city within a city.
Mm-hmm.
How like cognitive dissonance?
Right.
How can you see that between the rich and the poor, but
Right.
you can't see it between the guardian and
Right.
the layman?
Yeah, that's separate, buddy. That's separate. The five fingers and all that separation. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking that, oh, well, we'll be able to come together for the benefit of the country or whatever. That's not how that goes.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
Especially when your entire culture prioritizes
right.
one of those classes over the others.
Mm-hmm.
Like your farmers don't get more music because they don't have to worry about being rulers, so they can read the whole poems of Homer,
right.
and they can
right.
listen to
their education, everything for them is geared towards the guardian as well.
Geared towards the guardian as well.
Yeah, but
they are being
deprived. They won't be able to become
guardians because they have brass on the inside.
Right.
Instead of gold.
Right.
It's like, do you not see
right.
what you're creating here?
Mm-hmm.
Do you not see what you're creating? You create this caste system,
mm-hmm.
and then expect that everybody's gonna happily occupy their roles,
right.
because the rulers are gonna give everything that the farmer needs to be a farmer. But you can't you can't understand the idea that a person may not want to be a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
That a person isn't a farmer.
Right.
That they're just doing a thing, maybe.
Right.
That they're just doing a job. That they may have greater aspirations
mm-hmm.
than that.
or just another. I don't even
or
call
just
it
yeah,
just
or just
another
another aspiration.
inspiration.
That
Right.
performer may also want to be a musician
Right.
or something. Like people can want more. Like I don't understand. Like
Mhm.
you'd have this one person is good at one thing, and they must do that one thing
Right.
their entire
Right.
lives.
Your only purpose is this,
Hmm.
and to fall outside of that is, like I said,
Injustice.
is injustice.
Hmm. Like,
This
do you
is
not
crazy.
see what you're creating? You're creating the exact same thing.
Right.
The exact same
Mhm.
thing, but like intentionally.
Right.
You're intentionally creating that
We're going to
division.
do it better. See, they did it the
They did it the
wrong
wrong way.
way. See, we're going to do it the right
But the
way.
thing is that you don't even acknowledge the division.
Right.
You don't acknowledge the inequality,
Mhm.
the inequity. You don't even see that
Right.
because to you it's all in service of that one
Yes.
idea. So
Right. It's all the service of the
we're
state. Right.
unified. That oh,
Bruh.
like come on, that is no.
Mhm.
And then, like we said, it gets worse
Right.
because then he starts talking about his state owned eugenics program.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
His and
Because there aren't any. There aren't. You know. There isn't private property. You don't have any privacy, right?
mhm.
The marriages, particularly among the men and women who are, I'm gonna say, guardians, right? Their children belong to the state.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And raising those children is the state's responsibility, not the parents.
Right. As a matter of fact, I mean,
And
the
that we need
child
to make sure that the best of the best
mhm,
are able to breed as much as
possible.
possible, right? And those who are not designated as the best don't really get to breed at all.
Right. But the thing is that because there is no private relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have, like, you don't you don't know who the father is, because that's not even important anyway, because the children that are born belongs to
To the state.
the state.
This is literally what
Yeah.
it says here.
Seriously. I mean, well,
Then
right.
suppose you are the lawgivers, I said. You have picked out the men, and likewise then you will pick out the women of the same nature as far as possible, and give them to the men. These will all have dwellings and messes in common, and so no one will have any private property of that kind at all. So they will be together and mingle together in places of exercise, and in all their training. Then by inborn necessity, I think, they will mingle in union with one another. Don't you think it is a case of necessity? Not the necessity of the mathematics, Glaucon said, but the necessity of love, which is really more pressing than the other to persuade and to attract the majority of people. Very much so, I said, but next Glaucon, to mingle in disorderly fashion with each other or to do anything else in that fashion is not to be thought of in a city of happy people, and the rulers will not allow it.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So even the way that you decide to, I don't know. I'm just gonna say, you can only have sex a certain way.
yes, like I said,
Right.
what does mingle in disorderly fashion mean? What are you talking about? We can use the context clues
Right.
to understand what you're
Right.
saying here,
Right.
but so only missionary. That's what you're saying.
You know, and it's gonna all happen in the in the gymnasium.
In the general public.
Yeah, it's gonna right.
You have no private property.
Right.
You
Your
have
relationship, nothing is private. Right. Everything is
your relationships will be orchestrated and ordained by your
rulers. That's right.
And your rulers will designate how you can have relations.
That's right. That's right. Sounds. What?
So you have a state-owned eugenics program.
That's right.
Where your best of the best,
Mhm.
whatever that may be,
Right.
however you define it,
Mm-hmm.
they get the best pickings,
Right,
of your best of the best women. And then their children are going to be. Let me just read this other part.
Right.
This is literally what it says.
Yeah.
It follows from what we agreed that the best men must mingle most often with the best women, but the opposite, the worst of the worst, least often. And the children of the best must be brought up, but not the others, if the flock is to be tip top. And none must know this to be going on except the rulers alone. if the herd of the guardians is also to be as free as possible from the quarrels.
Mm-hmm.
Quite right, he said. Then holidays must be provided by law, when we shall bring together the brides and bridegrooms, and there must be festivals, and hymns must be made by our poets suitable to the weddings which come about. But the number of weddings we will leave the rulers to decide, so that they may keep the number of the men as far as possible as the same, taking into account war and disease and so forth, in order to keep the city from becoming either too large or too small, as far as possible. That is right, he said. And there must be some clever kind of lots devised, I think, so that your worthless creature will blame his bad luck on any conjunction, not his rulers.
Mm.
Just so,
Mm.
he said.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose when young men prove themselves good and true in war or anywhere else, honors must be given them, and prizes, and particularly more generous freedom of intercourse with women. At the same time, this will be a good excuse for letting as many children as possible be begotten of such men. I could go on,
Yeah, because it's
but
disaster.
I'm going to stop here.
Disaster.
I'm going to stop here
Uh-huh.
because he talks about lying.
Yes.
He says the ruler is going to have to lie to his people
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that, because since you're a worthless creature,
Right.
we don't want them to have any children.
Right.
No progeny,
Yeah.
no sex.
Right. Right.
But they're going to have to blame their bad luck, as he says it, on themselves and not the ruler.
Right.
So we're going to have to misdirect them
Right.
to make sure that you're best of the best.
Right. And even medicines will be provided. Of course, all of that is the lying. And I'm like, what kind of Planned Parenthood stuff going on here? Yes. Yes, if you're not a guardian, basically, then
if you're not designated as the best of the best of any particular field, right, then you are not allowed to have any progeny. Right. Only the best of the best are allowed to have progeny in this city. And if you prove yourself, then you get a freer intercourse. Right. You get more sex with more women. Mm-hmm. Right, so you can have as many children as possible because you've shown that you're the best of the best. Right. Whereas if you are on the other end, then, like I say, you're going to be lied to and given contraceptives and made sure that you are unable to procreate. And
if you and it just so happens, if you do have children, we're going to send them off somewhere far away, and they'll get lost in the system some type of way. If the child is disabled, well, we definitely have a place for them far, far away, because it's not as if,
like he says, literally, like I said, just listen to this. Right. The children of the good, then, they will take, I think, into the fold and hand them over to certain nurses who will live in some place apart in the city. Mm-hmm. Those of the inferior sort, and any one of the others who may be born defective, they will be put away as is proper in some mysterious, unknown place. Mm-hmm. Yes, he said, if the breed of the guardian is to be pure. Right. Those officials, then, will have charge of their nurture. Mm-hmm. They will bring into the fold the mothers when they are in milk, take every precaution that no mother shall recognize her own. If they are not able, they will provide others who have milk. They shall be careful that these mothers do not suckle too long. Sleepless nights and other troubles will be left for nurses and nannies. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now understand here that the disabled, what's the defective. When Plato says defective, that's determined by the ruler. Mm-hmm. Yes, that children are born. People are born with half limbs and stuff like that. But defective can mean anything. Like if you're a brunette, right? Mm-hmm. You're supposed to have brown eyes, right? But if you're a brunette and green eyes, that's not right. That's defective. Okay.
And he says that he's going to take the good ones.
That's right.
From their parents, because the children are property of the state. Mm-hmm. and put them in some other corner of the city,
Right.
right? Where
Because
there's
it,
going to be nurses and
right,
stuff
it's
like
right.
that, and all the
Hmm.
people there to make sure they are nurtured.
Right.
Their mothers will be brought in periodically.
Right.
They,
Because the child,
because the child is going to need breast milk,
right,
but then we're going to make sure that the mother doesn't recognize their child,
right,
because it's not their children,
right.
right?
It's the state,
It's the
right.
state's children,
Hmm.
and you know any other stuff that they have to deal with, we're going to make sure that their
The nannies
nannies
and
and
stuff
stuff
take
deal
it.
with that.
Hmm.
But the defective children,
Right.
right? Because the good children go in a place that you can see and know of.
Right.
Whereas the defective children, they're going to be put into some mysterious,
Serious orphans,
far off place. It
orphans
literally
somewhere.
says
Right.
mysterious, unknown place. What
What?
does are you going to be are you going to be committing infanticide? Are you
Mm,
killing children now?
well,
I
that's
don't know what you mean by being put in some mysterious unknown place. Are you killing children? Is that what you're talking about? Like hell? You're gonna put them in hell?
yeah, Hades.
In
Look, whatever.
Hades or whatever. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
And like I said, defect because the term they use is defective. That can mean anything according to the ruler.
Yeah.
You know, the child could be quote unquote perfectly healthy, but I don't know, the middle toe is short when it should be long. I don't know. It could be anything. Anything could deem your child
And
defective.
it gets he keeps
Hey,
going. He keeps
hey,
going
yeah,
with this.
yes,
Like I said, we literally said from page 258 to
yes,
page 260. That whole
yeah.
part.
That whole I just wrote disastrous. The whole
Mm-hmm.
thing is disastrous. You know.
You want to read? Go from this
You put
as
my
it should
glasses
be.
on. Oh,
Start from as it should be.
right down here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, all right. Let me see if I can see. All right, as it should be. I said. But now let us go on with the next part of our scheme. We said, you remember, that the offspring ought to be born from parents in their prime. True. Do you think, as I do, that the prime of life might fairly be counted as lasting 20 years for a woman and 30 for a man? Which years would you choose? He asked. The woman, I said, shall bear for the state from the age of 20 to 40. The man shall beget for the state from the time when his quickest racing speed is past to the age of 5 and 50. At all events, he said, that is the prime of both in body and mind. Then, if a man either older or younger than these shall meddle in begetting for the state, we shall say this offense is neither lawful nor right. He has planted a child in the city, which will be born, if the secret is kept, not as one conceived in the grace of sanctity. No holy rite and prayers will be heard over it, such as priestesses and priests will intone for each wedding, while the whole city prays that the children born may be better children of good parents and more useful children of useful parents from generation to generation. Instead, it was begotten in darkness with incontinence to the common danger. You are right, he said. The same law will hold, said I, if one still within the creative age touch a woman within her age without a ruler's pairing. Bastard and unaccredited and unsanctified, we shall call that child which he dumps upon the city. Quite rightly so, he said. But I think as soon as the women and the men pass the age of begetting, we shall leave the men free to consort with any they will, except with daughter or mother and and daughters' children, and those of an earlier generation than the mother, and the women again free, except for son or father, or those above and below as before. However, with all this allowance, we must warn them to be as careful as possible not to bring any of such conceptions into the light, not even one. But if a child is born, if one forces its way through, they must dispose of it on the understanding that there is no food or nurture for such a one. I'm gonna stop there because oh, what? Okay, all right. So So, you know, you have children at a particular stage in your life.
Mm-hmm.
These children do not belong to you, they belong to the state. Okay? If you were to have children outside of this arrangement, particularly if the ruler did not pair you all together,
Mm-hmm.
well, we have nothing to do with that.
You have
Basically, your child will be exposed, and if you know anything about
they
exposed,
will not be given the rights.
they will not be given rights. They will not be nurtured. They will be exposed. Exposed means that your child will die.
Your child be left. Literally, he says
your child will be left to die.
If your child is conceived outside of this paradigm, right, then he literally says get rid of it.
Yeah.
You have to get rid of it.
Yeah. You gotta
understand that the city will not provide for this child.
Mm-hmm.
No food.
No nothing. No nurture. No nothing.
You don't have any private property.
Right.
So you don't actually have food.
Right.
The city has food.
Right.
That it will not provide to your child.
Right.
So it is. You need to get rid of it.
Right. And we do know what that means.
So now you're literally talking about killing children.
Yes. Yes. Any children born outside of the arrangement, you need to get rid of them. You need to kill them. They need to be killed because, first of all, quote unquote, they're not defective, so they're not going to that particular orphan. We already know that they're not going to the best. So
they're just literally just outside of the paradigm, right? Outside of what is allowed, so they must be taken out.
That's die. And if you have read any literature from antiquity, the transients will be exposed. Like you'll just put the child out, and hopefully some wild animal or something to come in and kill the child.
So
this is not.
Yeah. Like we said, it gets worse.
Yeah.
It gets worse. Now you're talking about infanticide and like a state-owned eugenics program.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally what this is.
Yeah. And of course, after a particular age, look, long as no children are born of these unions, then everything is okay because the men can go and consort with whatever, as long as it's not the daughter or whatever. The women can too. It's just that now, if you were to get pregnant and there's a child, well, kill it.
And so, yeah.
Yes.
After that, if there is an after, like, it keeps going. That's not the full chapter.
No.
That's just a little prelude. It's a little thing that he said.
Yeah, I just talked about that whole thing. Yeah.
Right. So, after that, Socrates talks about how are we to implement something like this. Right.
Right.
And he says, right, because he's talking about trying to engender a sense of community to even implement something like this, right? He says, surely community in pleasure and pain binds it together. That is when, as far as possible, all the citizens alike are glad or sorry on the same occasions of birth and success, or deaths and disasters. Certainly, he said. But if each has his own feelings apart about such happenings, the bonds are cut. If some are very happy and some very much pained, while the same things happen to the city and those who are in the city, of course. And does not this come because the people do not all utter in unison the words mine and not mine, or likewise the word another's? Exactly so. So that city is best managed in which the greatest number say mine and not mine, with the same meaning about the same thing. Much is the best. That is when the city is nearest a single man. For example, what happens when your finger is hurt? The whole community, arranged throughout the body, stretching to the soul as one orderly whole under that which rules in it, feels the pain. And the community has pain altogether as a whole. The finger as a whole when the part is in trouble. So we say the man has pain in the finger. And the same is said of any other of the parts of the man, about pain when a part is in trouble, and about pleasure when a part gets better. Okay, all right. So what Socrates is saying here is that to engender a sense of community and unity.
Mm-hmm.
It is best seen, best understood. There's unity is best understood when the most people understand, can say that something is theirs and
Mm-hmm.
something is not theirs,
Mm-hmm.
and when something belongs to another.
Mm-hmm.
Akin to when, say, a person injures himself,
Mm-hmm.
you say that the whole body is injured
Yeah.
because all the whole body understands that pain,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
So if a particular group is happy about something and a particular group is sad about something, that's a problem.
Right.
The whole group must feel the same way about any stimulus,
Mm-hmm.
anything that happens to the city. The
Mm-hmm.
whole city must feel the exact same way, like a body.
Mm-hmm.
Like a body feels the exact same way about a particular stimulus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're gonna all celebrate this holiday that's designated by the state or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And
We're gonna all celebrate it, and everybody's gonna be happy.
like I said before, like I can understand something. I can understand something like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, cause the thing that annoys me, one of the things that annoys me the most about the world today is how something can happen,
Mm-hmm.
something terrible
Mm-hmm.
can happen, and the world just keeps going,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the world just keeps going, and
Mm-hmm.
nothing meaningful changes,
Mm-hmm.
nothing meaningful comes about. It's just this thing happens,
Mm-hmm.
and
We just keep going.
everything just keeps going.
Right.
And like I said, that always gets under my skin. So I
Mm-hmm.
can understand how Socrates could be like, we all must feel the same way about this thing,
Right.
for the sake of unity.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said,
In a vacuum,
in
yes.
a vacuum,
Yes.
the idea,
Uh-huh.
the idea.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying now is that not even your emotions are your own.
That's right.
You can't have private emotions.
Right.
You must feel the way everyone else feels about a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You must be happy when the state says you're supposed to be happy.
That's right.
You must be sad when the state says you must be sad.
North Korea. North Korea.
Well, that's unity. That's unity.
Right.
It's when everybody knows what is theirs, what is not theirs,
Mm-hmm.
what belongs to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
When everybody's able to feel the exact same way about a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, so now that's literally Brave New World.
Right. And remember, all of this is in service to the city, to the ruler, and to the city. Your feelings, your emotions, your education, your body, no private, nothing is private because it's all everything is useful and to the state, and it's at the discretion of the ruler.
Mm.
Okay, the ruler is the one who can. I changed my mind. I want more. I want this, or
Now,
I need to have
the
that.
ruler,
You know.
the ruler ideally exists in service of the city as well.
Yeah, that's cute. Yeah.
Everything is meant to be in service of the city.
Yeah. Sure.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that's going to go.
Right. We see, right? I mean, just think about what's happening right now, or what has transpired recently with the murder of all these elementary children, in a school, and how it is, talk about gun control and those different things. Where are these people? What is it in service of? We also talk about how the government, it has its power. It refuses to relinquish any power, and it's all in service of itself. And it will cost you to maintain that. Well, it's the same sort of setup here.
It gets worse.
Yeah, of course.
Because he talks about taking children onto the battlefield to make sure they get acquainted with war.
Yes.
Like, we could literally. He just keeps
mm-hmm.
going on with this stuff. But he eventually, after talking about what's appropriate for war, and before we pass up that part, because there is another thing where he talks about the nature of war.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, the difference between war and faction.
Right? He talks about taking the
Right.
children into battle the
Mhm.
same way, right? A child is taken into the workshop to learn the craft of a
Whatever. Yeah,
of a
a chair maker or
of a
whatever.
workman. So you take your children into battle so they become acquainted with battle,
Yeah. Take your
and
children
it's
to
going to
work
make
it.
the parent want to fight harder, right?
Mhm.
Because their child is there. They're
Right.
going to want to save the life of their child
Mhm.
and all that stuff. And then he talked about what if they lose and then the child gets killed and
Mhm.
some stuff like that. Then he starts talking about like the difference between faction and war,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
The difference between faction and war. He says that he creates his own little Geneva Convention, his own little
Right.
Geneva
Right.
talking about how there's a lot of cities that are
Mhm.
all culturally Hellenistic.
Uh huh.
It is not appropriate for those cities to raise each other to the
Right.
ground
So,
and to take their citizens
right.
as slaves and to butcher and do all
Mhm.
the things that they
Mhm.
would normally do.
Right.
It's not appropriate for them to do that to each other because they are still all of the same race.
Race.
That's
Right.
literally what he said.
Right.
They're all of the same
Mhm.
race, right? It's not appropriate for them for those two cities to do that to each other
Mhm.
because if those two cities have a problem, it's more of akin to brothers,
Right.
right? To a family member having because they're still family at the end of
Right.
the day. So you
Right.
don't really do all of that
Right.
to each other.
Mhm.
But to a barbarian
Right.
city or to a foreign city,
Mhm.
they
One that is
shall
not of the
that
same
is not of the
race.
same
Uh
race.
huh.
They shall know the terrors of the earth.
That's right.
There are no quarter shall be given.
That's right.
They will you can do anything you want to them.
Right.
Do anything you want to them. Take
Yes.
them as slaves,
Right.
burn their heads to the ground,
Right.
rape, pillage, do
Right.
all the stuff you want to do.
Mhm.
But you don't do that to each other.
Right.
Don't do that to each other.
Mhm.
Like we said, you're not trying to avoid
Mhm.
war.
Right.
You're
You're
just trying
to
to
perfect it.
perfect it.
Mhm.
You're trying to perfect it.
Mhm. Now keep in mind that this city state
So
that Plato.
taking slaves isn't wrong.
No, that's not
It's
injustice.
just
Right.
it's just don't do it to other people that are of your race,
Race. Right.
who are culturally of your people.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it to other people,
Right.
which I guess at the time was a revolutionary idea because that's not how war was waged.
Mm-hmm.
War was a total all or nothing,
Mm-hmm.
everything. So at the time, you can see that at the time he was taking a tack that wasn't seen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But you would think that for someone who is so, obsessed with justice and injustice
Mm-hmm.
and trying to understand these things, that there wouldn't be a line in the sand about these particular things,
Right.
especially about war
War.
and what it can do to a
Mm-hmm.
people.
But this city state that he's talking about, it's all in service of war.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's for. All your people, the education, no privacy, no private property. That's all to create this
The
warrior,
perfect machine,
right? That's ready for
that can
war.
withstand anything thrown at it,
Mm-hmm.
and that is best able to defend itself
Mm-hmm.
against not just other people, but other ideas,
Yeah.
other music,
Mm-hmm.
other statements, other poems,
Right. Right. Right.
just other ways of life entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Creating this pinnacle, this perfect,
Mm-hmm.
absolute city
Mm-hmm.
full of perfect, absolute people
Right.
who are all perfectly content and happy in
That's right.
every position they are given
Mm-hmm.
because they understand that those positions were preordained by God
Mm-hmm.
and that it is all in service, that their usefulness is all in service to the maintenance and health of the city as a whole.
Yuck.
This is
What freedom?
That's what we call tyranny.
Yes. Yes.
These many different forms of tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
Your Eugenics program is biological tyranny,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your caste system is social, political, and religious tyranny,
Mm-hmm.
right? Censoring Homer and Hesiod is historical tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
You're just stomping through everything
Right.
with no idea. I'm sorry if you get
Right.
siren in the back, but with no idea, no understanding of
People, right?
compromise and like
And how
life and
people operate.
humanity.
Yes, how people are.
Yeah.
People do change. People do grow. People want other things. They want, you know, they want to be allowed. They want to grow. They want
Yes.
to be able to think for themselves, to feel, to act, to be in their, to be natural. You
Mhm.
know, if something hurts me, I should be able to cry. Not I need permission to cry, or that because
It's not
you
appropriate for me to feel this way
it's not
because the
appropriate.
state.
Yeah, because the state says that I should not feel a particular way. So,
And like I said, he keeps going
mhm,
with this. And there is a part where this is the formal
Dushin
introduction
of the
of the philosopher
philosopher
king.
king. Mhm.
When he literally says here, the philosophers must become kings in our cities. Or those who are now called kings and potentates must learn, excuse me, must learn to seek wisdom like true and genuine philosophers. And so political power and intellectual wisdom will be joined in one. And the crowds of natures who now pursue one or the other separately must be excluded. Until that happens, my dear Glaucon, there can be no rest from troubles for the cities, and I think for the whole human race. Until then, this constitution, which we have now evolved in words, will never grow into being as something possible. It will never see the light of the sun, but it will live only in our description. Now, this is what has made me so reluctant so long to speak, because I saw that it would run clean contrary to opinion. For it is not easy to see that no other constitution could give happiness to man or to people.
So it's very simple here. What do you think the philosophy of a king would be? Right? What What do you think that would be? And what do you think the king, who is the philosopher, how do you think the king would discuss, have his philosophy? It's the same. The philosopher and the king, there isn't any difference here, because everything that they're going to discuss, everything that they're doing, everything that they're discussing is in service to the state,
Mm.
is in service to rulership. I rule, you're ruled. So you tell me what philosophy is going to go up against that. And if there is a philosophy to go up against that, well, you need to be ostracized anyway.
Because this part of the discussion comes about when they say that what you're talking about is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Because they all agree that what they've described thus far is the perfect city
Right.
that people are going to be perfectly happy
Right.
in. So yeah, they all agree that that's and all those things we just talked about was just
Right.
and right.
Mm-hmm.
And but Socrates' whole point is that we're never going to see it, not as long as we do not have the philosopher king.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, as long as your philosophers and your kings are separate, and the rabble, the
Mm-hmm.
crowds, are not joined together in this pursuit,
Mm-hmm.
it'll never be that. And I find it funny, as we've often said that that the wise man knows that he knows nothing and stuff
Right.
like that.
Uh-huh.
Evidently, that's not
That's not the case here.
that's not the case
Right.
for Socrates, because
Mm-hmm.
the philosopher to Socrates is someone who is able to say what a thing
Mm-hmm.
is, right? To able to plant their feet and say that this is what that thing is,
Mm-hmm.
and make the distinction of what is and what is not.
Mm-hmm.
A person who's able to truly define the parameters of their reality.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of understanding reality,
Right.
your philosopher king is meant to dictate it.
That's right. Which is
Like we talked
which is
about that
troublesome.
many a times
Right.
before.
Uh-huh.
Your philosopher isn't isn't a thinker.
Right.
It's a ruler.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not understand how these ideas are fundamentally opposed. Your philosopher is meant to question things,
Right.
to question the fundamental reality
Right.
of reality,
Yeah, your philosophers are not there to dictate.
not to create it,
Sure.
merely to understand
Stand
what is
it
present in
in
front
front
of
of
them,
them. Mm-hmm.
and to constantly question
Right.
and to constantly pursue that end.
Right.
But that's not how you see it.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
I said, the idea of the philosopher king isn't to question war, but to
Mm-hmm.
perfect war.
Mm-hmm.
Not to question society and class, but to perfect society and class.
Mm-hmm.
That's the role of your
Yeah.
philosopher king.
And the philosopher king is on. He will only be able to dictate and to create what it is that he wants, that he deems benefits.
Beneficial.
Yeah, that's beneficial to himself and for you too.
So you're defining
Right.
reality.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to understand.
Right.
Like we talked about that in the religion episode.
Mm-hmm.
You're dictating the parameters of the world.
Right.
You're not accommodating for the full
That's
grain
right.
of human thought, but you're controlling it.
Mm-hmm.
You're literally controlling. You want to control how people feel,
Right. Literally.
how people relate to one another,
Mm-hmm.
how the relationships that people can have, the history that they are taught, the things that they can say, and the music that they can listen to, the way that they can dress, how they can express themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You want to control every axis of the human reality to create your perfect city.
Right.
That's your philosopher king. One who is best able to dictate reality.
Right. And who's going to determine who is it that's going to crown or make this philosopher king? Old white men. Old white men. Yeah, the elders. Well, old white men. They are the ones who are going to constantly point at this, most likely, another white male that's going to continue on and on with what has already been
Who's
established.
going to be able to dictate reality to the rest of the citizenship.
Right. But it's not ever anything quote unquote new. It's because
you're safeguarding against
yes,
because
that's
the
right.
is dangerous.
Right. That's
you're
right.
making sure everything stays the same.
Stagnation will kill you.
And it's like we've talked about this before about how this is a fundamentally broken idea.
Right.
Because philosophy questions reality.
Right.
And your king, profits from it.
Mm-hmm.
These two ideas don't go together.
Right.
But you have to evidently you have to redefine the parameters of philosophy as a whole.
Right.
Which is doesn't mean anything to you because you've already redefined God.
Right.
And music and history and
your poets,
the human
right.
condition and relationships and emotions. So yeah, redefining philosophy is a whole other, it's nothing.
Right. Especially if it's to the end, and the end is in service of
the city.
Right.
Of your perfect, absolute society.
Whatever.
It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It's a broken idea from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The pursuit of it handicaps humanity as a whole.
Yes.
Because no person, no one group, no one being can dictate what the world is or what it's supposed to be.
Right.
That is a human pursuit meant for every last one of us.
Right.
We've often talked about that responsibility in creating and understanding your reality.
Right.
And being able to temper that reality with understanding that you're not alone in it.
Mm-hmm.
That is an individual pursuit.
Right.
No state and or king or God is meant to do that for you. Because when that does, you get tyranny.
Right.
In all of its various forms. It's madness. It is madness.
And like I said, obviously these things are not happening. These things are not happening in your city. That's why
this is what you want to happen.
These are the things that you want to happen. You want to curtail, women who I don't know who want to do other things and the farmer who decides that I want to sing or whatever. You want to curtail that kind of freedom because first of all you cannot control that, so you want to find a way to control it, and you want to control it solely for the purpose of how it benefits you.
How it benefits the city.
The city, yes, the ruler, the city. How it benefits you.
The ruler is second to the city.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, yeah. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments. And once again, thank you for hearing us out.
Thank you.